Over there, over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere. Whenever people think of a country going to war, they naturally imagine the thousands of men who step forward to fight for the cause. Whether or not they believe the cause is just, everyone will acknowledge the courage of those young soldiers, and rightfully so. But that is only half the story. A war may be fought over there, but it's also fought right here, at home. Not with bullets and bayonets, but with fundraising and farming, manufacturing and marketing, teaching and training. And all of those responsibilities during the First World War fell on the shoulders of women. The women who waved goodbye to their husbands, sons, and brothers, many of whom they never saw again. During the First World War, the variety of jobs that women took over from men was staggering. Mothers, wives, and daughters fixed broken radios for use in Morse code training. They censored the mail so that secret information wasn't accidentally divulged. They classified fingerprints so that wounded and dead soldiers could be identified. They were machinists, mechanics, translators, telegraphers, scientists, surgeons, even Secret Service agents. Hundreds of jobs, thousands of activities, millions of women. In fact, when the United States entered the First World War, there were more women enlisted in war work than there were men enlisted in the armed forces. It's not really surprising, though, because the country was neither ready nor willing to fight in what we called the European conflict. In 1916, President Woodrow Wilson had been reelected on the promise that he keep America out of the war that had already been raging for 2 years. He soon had to change his tune. German submarines started sinking ships in the North Atlantic, and the German Foreign Office made secret overtures to Mexico to join in a military alliance against the United States. Well, that caused the previously anti-war sentiment in the country to shift dramatically, and President Wilson's dream of a negotiated peace ruined. He had to accept the inevitable. On April 6, 1917, he declared war on Germany, saying the world must be made safe for democracy. Those words would come back to haunt him in a way he could have never imagined. I suppose you're probably wondering what all of this had to do with me. And after all, I was not in the military, and none of my family served during the First World War. I had been married twice, but both my husbands had died before the war began, and my 2 sons were your age. I had no need to fear for their safety. But like many women, I felt a powerful call to support my country's efforts in the war. I had been instilled with a deep sense of duty by my father, Willett Stillman Maine, who spent most of his life in law enforcement. My mother, Sophie, was also devoted to service. She was actually awarded a medal by the French government for her relief work during the war. I also think that my family being devout Baptist was a major influence. My father was a founding member of the First Baptist Church right here in Madison in the 1850s. And much later, I donated the money for the window, the rose window that is still in the building. You can see it near the corners of Franklin and University Avenues downtown. Whatever the reason, I was always drawn to community activities. I participated in the Civics Club, and I joined the YWCA when I was a student at the University of Wisconsin. I graduated in 1896, and within 3 years, I had married my first husband, the Reverend Judson Kempton. He was a very serious man. but he was absolutely devoted to me and to our 3 children. 2 of them were born in Illinois. One was born in Muscatine, Iowa, where the Reverend had taken a church post. But in 1908, our happiness was cut tragically short when he died of typhoid after only 8 years of marriage. It's a testament to the effect that he had on his parishioners that over 2,000 people attended his memorial service. They spoke admiringly of the effect he had on the moral well-being of Muscatine, and they praised his love and compassion. One of those who spoke that day bore testimony to my husband was William Roach. He was a prominent businessman and a local civics leader. His own wife had died earlier that year. We were drawn to each other in our grief. 2 years after our respective losses, we were married. He had raised 2 children of his own with his first wife. They were both long gone, grown up by the time of our wedding, but he became a loving stepfather to our own 3 offspring. Sadly, we were never able to have children of our own. And then tragedy struck again when he died suddenly on a business trip to Chicago after only 6 years of marriage. So, at the age of 42, I returned to Madison, twice widowed and with a family to support. I devoted myself to motherhood and to supporting the YWCA, which took on a much larger role in my life once the war started. You see, the YWCA was one of 7 nationwide organizations that was committed to what would later be known as the United War Work Campaign. The others were the YMCA, the Knights of Columbus, the War Camp Committee Services, the Jewish Welfare Board, Salvation Army, and the American Library Services. But among ourselves, we were known as the 7 Sisters. Armed with a federal budget of over $170 million, we set to work, supplying services and support to our fighting men over there and their families back here. Perhaps because of my long association with the organization, or perhaps because of my many valuable social contacts, I was honored to be appointed as the vice chairman of the Wisconsin chapter of the YWCA. We were led by Miss Clara Rowe, whom I had met at a conference and with whom I attended many fundraisers. Based in Madison, we raised awareness for the War Work Campaign, as well as provided job training for the many jobs that women were taking on once the war progressed. Now, over there where the fighting was happening, the United States War Department did not permit women in the combat zones. There were thousands of nurses, of course, close behind the lines, but other support staff was kept at a much safer distance. The one exception was a group of young women in the Army Signals Corps. Now, they were fluent in both French and English and skilled in the new technology known as telegraphy. They were lovingly referred to as the Hello Girls. And the YWCA worked tirelessly to support their efforts. There were only about 300 of them, but they were vital. They were a vital link in the communications network. This poster from then, it still gives me goosebumps when I think of the lives that those young women affected and the sacrifices that they made for their country. I am sad to say that although they were under military authority and effectively operated as Army personnel, they were not afforded the same benefits as their male counterparts. Many were shocked to learn after the war, for example, that they did not qualify for the Victory Medal, which was awarded to other members of the military. President Wilson was generous in his praise of the work done by the 7 Sisters during the war. He wrote a letter to Raymond Fosdick, who is the chairman of the Committee on Training Camp Activities. It said, I would be obliged if you would convey to them from me a very warm expression of the government's appreciation of the splendid services they've rendered. Fine words, but an accounting was now coming due. You see, during the war, many women had been campaigning for the right to vote. Once peace was declared, they called upon President Wilson to keep good on that promise, that the country had gone to war to protect democracy. Well, how, they wondered, could it be considered a true democracy if half of the participants aren't allowed to participate in it? Took 2 more years, but in 1920, the 19th Amendment finally gave women the right to vote. Although it would be many more years before every state in the Union extended that right to all women, regardless of their race. After the war ended, we all hoped that life could go back to normal. Unfortunately, that wasn't easy. The Spanish flu rampaged through the country for 2 years, actually killing more people with the flu than died during the war. A dozen of them are buried in the cemetery. But eventually, the pandemic faded, and I was able to give my children a good start in life. My daughter, Elizabeth, attended Knox College in New York State and became a music teacher. My oldest son, Willett, went to Amherst on his way to becoming a college professor. And my youngest son, Judson, he became a writer of some distinction. Perhaps he was inspired by an old college friend of mine, the novelist, Miss Zona Gale. She spent a lot of time at my home during the 20s. I never remarried, but I remained devoted to the YWCA and my church for the rest of my life. And even though there were other wars, too many wars in my lifetime, I will never forget the satisfaction that I and so many other women derived from our service during that first tragic World War. If any good can be said to come of such a conflict, I hope it'll be that women finally get the rights that they deserve and the respect that they have earned for proving themselves worthy in a crisis, whether it's over here or over there. Send the word over there.